My assertion for this project is that since 1990, the United States population has increased. I became interested in this topic from wanting to know the current population. This is my actual data from the project. It's the United States population from 1990 to 2011. You can see on the graph down here, the population starts on the y-axis, and it's measured in millions of people, and the year is on the x-axis, and the plot points start at 1990 and they end at 2011. You can see that in 1990 there's about 250 million people, and in 2011 at the end there's about 310 million people. The r-squared value is 0.99, so that means, since it's so close to 1, that you're going to be able to predict what happens in future or past years. You can determine what those numbers most likely are because it is so close to 1. After finishing the data on the national chart, I wanted to take it one step further for the project and just focus on 2 individual states. So I chose Alabama and South Carolina. The time frame was still the same, so it's still from 1990 to 2011. You can still see that the graph is still laid out the same. What's interesting, though, to me is that the r-squared values were very similar. The r-squared value for Alabama is 0.989, and the r-squared value for South Carolina is 0.988, and the value of the national was 0.9 again. So it's interesting to see that overall, even the states have the same r-squared value as the national. And it's even more interesting to see that South Carolina started lower than Alabama did on the chart, and they ended up in almost the same place, which means that South Carolina is slowly increasing faster. These 3 graphs definitely prove that there's been a steady increase since 1990 up until 2011, and the r-squared value is 0.9 for all 3 graphs, so it's a very, very steady pace that would lead you to predict things very easily for the future. My project wasn't necessarily a huge conflict, especially in our society. It's really just something you kind of want to look out for and just keep an eye on. I know that in other countries it's a bigger issue, like in China they have a policy that they try to enforce that states that you're only allowed to have 1 child. I know that's not always the case, but they try to enforce it because the population can get really bad, can get really out of hand. When I first started looking at my data for this project, I found that population research is pretty limitless. You can make it as specific as you want. You can filter it down to be about race, religion, gender. You could also be more specific about your areas and choose more states than just 2 like I did. You can also discover the specific zones that are populated more densely, like this illustration at the bottom shows. This is another interesting population research that was interesting to me because it uses the percent change of population, and it's organized by counties in the different states. So as you can see here, the purple areas are the most change positively, and then when it goes down to white it's neutral, and then once it hits orange it actually is the negative, so those people would have lost population. And this is under the time frame of 1990 to 2000.